Most gardens don't fail in July because it's hot. They fail because the soil quietly collapsed weeks earlier. July just exposes it. Every year the pattern repeats. April looks promising, May looks productive. Plants are upright, green, cooperative. You feel like you're ahead of schedule. Then June arrives and something shifts. Growth slows. Leaves pale. Fruit stalls halfway to ripening. Pests appear as if they were invited. By July, the garden looks tired, and most people assume the problem is weather. Too hot. Too dry. Too much rain. Bad luck. But soil doesn't die from heat alone. It dies from accumulated stress. It dies from disturbance, from exposure, from starvation, from imbalance. And the worst part is this. The collapse was predictable. It started early in the season. It started underground. And if you don't recognize the pattern, you'll repeat it every single year. Today, we're breaking down exactly why most garden soil will be functionally dead by July, what actually happens beneath the surface, the warning signs that show up before visible failure, and what you need to fix now, before summer exposes weaknesses you can't repair mid-season. Because by the time you see symptoms in July, you've already lost the battle. The damage was done in February, March, and April when the soil was being prepared. When soil dies, it doesn't turn gray or disappear. It stops functioning as a living system. Healthy soil is not dirt plus nutrients. It is an ecosystem. In every handful, there are bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, earthworms, microarthropods, an entire food web operating continuously. These organisms break down organic matter, unlock minerals, transport nutrients to roots, create soil aggregates, and suppress pathogens. Roots feed microbes with sugars. Microbes exchange nutrients. Fungal networks extend the reach of plants far beyond what their roots could manage alone. A single fungal strand can extend several feet, connecting multiple plants in a nutrient-sharing network. This is not poetic language. This is biology. When that system is intact, plants access nutrients steadily, not in spikes. Water infiltrates evenly. Oxygen circulates. Disease pressure remains low because beneficial organisms dominate. But when the biological engine weakens, nutrients may still exist in the soil test, yet plants can't access them efficiently. Roots hit compacted layers and stall. Water either pools on top or drains straight through. Pathogens multiply because the competition is gone. Soil still looks dark and healthy, but it has become functionally inert. And once that threshold is crossed mid-season, rebuilding takes months. By July, you can stabilize. You cannot fully restore. So why does this biological collapse show up in midsummer instead of spring? Because July is peak demand season. Early in the year, plants are small. Nutrient requirements are modest. Even a weakened system can keep up temporarily. A tomato seedling with 4 leaves isn't pulling much from the soil. But by late June and July, that same plant is 6 feet tall with dozens of fruit forming simultaneously. Tomatoes are setting heavy fruit. Corn is drawing nitrogen aggressively. Squash vines are sprawling across entire beds. Peppers are building biomass at maximum rate. Demand multiplies exponentially. If the soil food web has been damaged earlier, July reveals the structural weakness. It is like a bridge that seems fine under light traffic but cracks when heavy trucks cross. The heat is not the cause. It is the stress test. And most gardens fail that test because of how they were managed from February through May. The first major cause is disturbance. Tilling feels productive. It makes beds look organized. It gives that fluffy, satisfying texture that convinces you something good just happened. But every pass of a tiller shreds fungal networks that took months to establish. Those fungal hyphae are not decoration. They bind soil particles together and move nutrients and water across distances roots alone cannot reach. When you till, you sever those networks. Recovery is slow. Some fungi take an entire season to reestablish what was destroyed in minutes. At the same time, tilling introduces a surge of oxygen that accelerates decomposition. Organic matter breaks down rapidly. Nutrients spike. Plants respond with quick growth. It looks like success. Gardeners see that initial flush and think, this is working. But that flush consumes the soil's long-term reserves. By June, the organic matter that fueled that early vigor is diminished. Structure weakens, aggregates collapse, compaction increases. The soil that felt alive in April is structurally poorer by early summer. That is not bad luck. That is physics and biology working exactly as expected. The second cause is bare soil. Leaving soil uncovered between plantings or around transplants might seem harmless, but it is one of the fastest ways to shut down surface biology. On sunny days, bare soil temperatures can exceed air temperature by 20 degrees or more. The top inch can reach temperatures that push many microbes into dormancy or death. At 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is common on exposed soil surfaces in full sun, most beneficial bacteria simply cannot survive. Surface layers dry rapidly. Microbial activity slows when moisture drops below a critical threshold. Even if you water regularly, that surface experiences extreme swings between wet and dry, hot and cool. It becomes unstable. Beneficial organisms retreat deeper, away from feeder roots. Roots remain near the surface where nutrients are most available, but biology has retreated below them. That disconnect slows nutrient cycling right where it is needed most. Covered soil, in contrast, remains cooler, more stable, and biologically active. Mulch is not cosmetic, it is habitat protection. The third cause is nutrient strategy. Quick-release synthetic fertilizers provide nutrients directly in soluble forms. Plants absorb them rapidly. Leaves green up. Growth surges. But when plants receive nutrients without microbial mediation, they reduce root exudates, the sugars that feed beneficial microbes. In natural systems, plants invest in microbial partnerships because microbes unlock nutrients. When fertilizer bypasses that exchange, the partnership weakens. Microbial populations decline. The soil food web simplifies. Over time, soil becomes dependent on repeated fertilizer inputs to maintain performance. This is the fertilizer treadmill that many gardeners find themselves on. By July, when demand spikes or fertilizer applications taper off, plants struggle because the biological infrastructure that should buffer nutrient availability has eroded. You fed the plant. You did not feed the system. The result is a garden that performs in bursts but cannot sustain steady production. Watering habits compound the problem. Soil life needs oxygen as much as moisture. Overwatering displaces oxygen and shifts microbial communities toward anaerobic organisms, many of which contribute to root disease. Pythium, Phytophthora, and other root rots thrive in saturated, oxygen-poor conditions. On the opposite end, shallow, frequent watering keeps moisture near the surface but discourages deep rooting. When summer heat intensifies, shallow roots are the first to stress. Deep, less frequent watering encourages roots to explore cooler soil layers and supports a more stable moisture profile for microbes. The ideal is soil that stays evenly moist but never saturated. Inconsistent watering creates cycles of saturation and drought that stress both biology and roots. Stability supports life. Extremes suppress it. Organic matter inputs also matter more than most gardeners realize. In forests and grasslands, organic matter is continuous. Leaves fall. Roots die and regrow. Residue decomposes in place. In many gardens, we remove spent crops entirely. We clean beds down to bare soil. We add compost once in spring and assume that will last the season. But soil organisms feed continuously. If inputs stop, populations decline. By midsummer, without fresh residue or mulch, microbial communities contract. Structure weakens, aggregation declines, the soil becomes more prone to compaction and erosion. What looked rich and dark in April is biologically exhausted by July. The warning signs appear earlier than most people think. Growth slows despite adequate water. This is usually the first signal. Plants that were adding inches per day in May suddenly plateau in early June. Leaves yellow and do not respond strongly to fertilizer. You add nitrogen and see minimal improvement, which tells you the problem isn't nitrogen availability, but rather the plant's inability to access it. Disease pressure increases. Powdery mildew, early blight, or bacterial spot that wasn't an issue suddenly appears on multiple plants. Soil that was loose in spring becomes hard and resistant. Water pools on the surface instead of infiltrating evenly. This is especially telling. It means soil structure has collapsed and pore spaces have closed. These are not random issues. They are signals of biological decline. If you see them in June, the collapse began earlier. The solution is not more fertilizer or more water. The solution is structural. So how do you prevent July soil death? You act before planting accelerates demand. First, reduce disturbance. If you have been tilling every year, transition gradually toward minimal disturbance. Use a broad fork to loosen compacted areas without flipping layers. Apply compost on the surface rather than incorporating it deeply. Let earthworms and microbes move it downward naturally. This preserves fungal networks and aggregates. Second, eliminate bare soil. Apply 2 to 4 inches of mulch around crops. Shredded leaves, straw, compost, all work. In pathways, plant low-growing covers like white clover that stay green and protect soil year-round. In unused beds, seed cover crops, crimson clover, field peas, buckwheat, any of these will keep roots in the ground and biology fed. The rule is simple. Sunlight should hit leaves, not soil. Third, feed the soil steadily. Compost is microbial inoculation and food source combined. Apply 1 to 2 inches before planting. Throughout the season, chop and drop plant residue. Cut plants at ground level instead of pulling them out. Leave roots to decompose underground. This builds organic matter exactly where biology operates. Fourth, adjust fertilizer strategy. If you rely on synthetics, reduce gradually while increasing organic inputs. Worm castings, compost, and balanced organic fertilizers support microbial activity rather than bypassing it. Fifth, water with intention. Water deeply enough to encourage deep rooting, usually 6 to 8 inches of penetration. Allow surface layers to dry slightly between waterings to maintain oxygen flow. If you are already seeing decline mid-season, you can still stabilize the system. Top-dress beds with compost before symptoms worsen. Even a half-inch layer adds billions of beneficial organisms. Water deeply to activate microbial communities below the surface. Add mulch immediately to buffer temperature and moisture swings. Replace cool season crops struggling in heat with varieties suited for summer conditions. The bigger shift is mental. Stop managing soil as a container. Start managing it as infrastructure. Infrastructure must be protected, fed, and stabilized. When you disturb it constantly, expose it to extremes, and feed it inconsistently, it fails under load. July is heavy load season. If you strengthen the system early, it carries that load. If you weaken it, July exposes the flaw. The difference between a garden that fades and one that powers through is rarely dramatic intervention. It is steady protection. When soil stays biologically active, everything becomes easier. Plants maintain vigor longer. Pest pressure drops because healthy plants resist opportunistic damage. Water infiltrates and drains predictably. Fertility builds instead of depleting. By year 3 of consistent management, you notice something surprising. The garden requires fewer corrections. You spend less time reacting and more time harvesting. That is compounding biology at work. Most gardeners treat symptoms. Yellow leaves mean fertilizer. Slow growth means more water. Disease means spray. Those responses keep you busy but do not strengthen the system. Symptoms are downstream. Biology is upstream. Manage upstream and the downstream quiets down. The time to prevent July soil death is now, in February and March. Reduce disturbance. Cover the surface. Feed organic matter consistently. Water deeply but not excessively. Leave residue in place. These decisions determine whether July becomes a month of decline or abundance. Soil does not die because summer is harsh. It dies because we create conditions that weaken it before summer tests it. Build resilience early and July becomes productive instead of reactive. Keep the biological engine alive and your garden will not limp through midsummer. It will accelerate. That is not optimism. That is systems thinking applied to soil.